Dylan LeClair, how are you doing, man? Good to see you. Welcome to the
In
show.
the dream. Appreciate you having me back on.
No, man, it's my pleasure. Listen, Dylan, I mean, you've been doing such great stuff, and you've been just rocking it everywhere. To be honest with you, I mean, some of your works it's just beyond my league, my brain league. But I mean, I gotta tell you, I mean, for I mean, in my opinion, all the people who quit school are the best ones. So you quit school, right? Because you're not indoctrinated. You question this whole Keynesianism, this whole bullshit in dogmatization, this whole brainwashing, and I mean, I think only few people are able, to really like see beyond the plate. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair characterization. I mean, obviously, there's certain avenues in the traditional kind of legacy educational path that you can do quite well. But I don't know. I was just studying business, econ, finance, and it wasn't optimal. So yeah, took a leap and kind of dove into the Bitcoin space, and it's paid off so far. I can't complain. Definitely having a good time.
Awesome. So listen, I'm gonna ask you the questions that I've been given by from my girlfriend's brother, who is a total fan of yours. He's a paid subscriber of your, what is it called, deep dive newsletter?
Yes.
Yeah. So he loves your work, and he gave me a bunch of questions, but I'm not sure even whether some of them might be too technical. But hey, I'm just gonna ask you that maybe in the end. But he says hi to you, greetings from Wolfgang, from Austria. So listen, my first question is the work you do. I mean, you seem to have like a range, a spectrum of listeners, followers, and subscribers. People who are following you, not only individual but especially institutional. Like when they read your stuff, like what do you? I mean, can you tell me like what is the purpose of your work? Like what kind of action? Because you're doing like a lot of analysis when they like understand and they dig into your data, the numbers, the analysis, what kind of consequences or what kind of action do they take? I mean, what is like the action reaction? What?
Yeah. So, I mean, I tell people that the deep dive, and we're doing daily content, or at least during the weekdays. So, like, for the most part, 20 pieces a month. It's on-chain analysis. We talk about derivative markets and we talk about kind of macro, but we're not really giving like trading signals. We have this kind of broad thesis that Bitcoin's the best money ever, and that it's in its monetization phase. So really, what we're trying to do is transparently document that happening, and try to inform readers about what's happening and why. And so like we'll say like, and we talk in probabilistic terms. So like we'll highlight like in our monthly report we're putting out today, we're saying like, hey, these are the risk factors in the short to medium term in the market. And we've in November and in the fall we said, hey, even though Bitcoin is treated as a risk off asset for an increasing amount of people around the world, it's a monetary safe haven. Increasingly, like macro funds adopted Bitcoin as a risk on asset. And so if we see any sort of equity downturn, or if the Fed attempts to taper, and we'll see how far it gets, like Bitcoin could get hit initially in an illiquidity crises. And so like those sort of things where we talk in broad terms, not because we're trying to like be very vague, but because no one knows over the short to medium term. And we're just trying to highlight like what could happen. So like with this on-chain indicator or this cycle kind of, we can say like, for instance, we can look at the cost basis of every coin on the network. And so we can say the current price of Bitcoin is 37,000. The on-chain cost basis is 24,000. So like every user on average paid 24K, or at last move of their coins at 24,000. Is it a perfect indicator? No, but there's a lot of signal that we can take from that metric. And so we can kind of look at like the ratio between price and its realized price or its on-chain cost basis and see different things. Is Bitcoin relatively overvalued? Is Bitcoin relatively really cheap historically? And again, like, does Bitcoin go up, down, sideways tomorrow or next week? We don't know, and no one knows. But we like to kind of give users, or not users, our subscribers, our readers, just some historical context, just some like transparency to say, hey, if you have a job that has nothing to do with markets or finance or crypto or Bitcoin, like, we'll help you keep you informed. And we always stress like, hey, 99% of people should just stack sats and chill out. But there is a pretty big demand from what we've seen to just kind of understand the story, understand what's happening. Why did Bitcoin drop 12% yesterday? Well, it was because of a derivative market liquidation. And here's what happened, and here's on what exchange. So, I mean, those are just some examples, but that's really the purpose of the deep dive and what we're doing.
Awesome. So is that the primary factor for the price crash, the derivatives market, or are there other, or could you like a little bit give an overview, like what's been happening with this? Because a lot of people don't understand, like, why has it been crashing like to, I mean, good for the hodlers, it's like the super accumulating phase, but what are, I mean, besides the derivatives market, is it like people are shorting, they need to cover their asses? Like what's going on?
Yeah, so I mean, over the last 4 weeks, Bitcoin and the correlation with the Nasdaq has been 0.93, so 93% correlation, rolling correlation. So, and that's on an hourly basis. So, like, basically tick for tick with equities. So, kind of just showing, and we could also see, like, if you look at like the grayscale, the GBTC discount, the premium previously always a premium turned to a discount in February of 2021. Was a mild discount for much of 2021, and from like November to January, that discount went from like 10% to minus 30%. So 30% discount to net asset value. You could buy $100 of Bitcoin for $70 with GBTC shares a week ago. So what's that saying? Well, who allocated to GBTC? And remember, Grayscale holds 650,000 Bitcoin. So who allocated it to GBTC shares, who bought GBTC shares through Grayscale in 2020 and 2021 when they purchased 400,000 more Bitcoin? Well, it was like those kind of the macro allocators, those macro funds, the Wall Street guys, accredited investors, institutions. And so like their risk models are the Nasdaq's drawing down, they just sell their GBTC, they just sell their Bitcoin. They don't care. It's not, to them, it's not this like kind of like emotional thing. It's not like this, they don't have a thesis where they're all in Bitcoin with everything they have. They're just like, it's just a risk asset to them. They just dump it. And so that's what we're seeing recently. I mean, some of like when we break some like levels, that's why Bitcoin kind of aggressively sells off, is because derivative markets are unwinding. But really the true story has been just kind of correlation with equities recently. It's the marginal macro buyer that was there for, in 2020, in 2021, all that new money pumping in. Well, a little bit of that has trickled out. You've seen some marginal selling. So those hodlers of last resort, stackers of last resort, they're still buying and happier than ever. But like a larger amount than ever. And like the ecosystem's growing, hash rate at all-time highs, Lightning's being adopted. You have nation states talking about it, all of these positive developments, but marginal sellers dominate. And so like, that's just a short-term thing. And so like, for the time being, Bitcoin's going to be correlated with the Nasdaq and the tech index. And if volatility spikes, then in the S&P, Bitcoin will sell off, and that's okay. It's just kind of part of the adoption phase, but that's been, driving price action for the time being.
So let me tie this. Okay, there's a question, like you've probably seen it on Twitter. So do you think it's realistic that in the next, 6 to 12 months, the price could even, I mean, I don't care about because, they're all the like super hodlers with super strong conviction, and, they just don't fucking care about the fiat price. It's just irrelevant. We're never selling. So he's asking 2022 Bitcoin expectation, institutions enter, price rises, reality, institutions enter future markets and control price over long-term opinions. Now, do you think it's realistic? I mean, my question is, do you think it's realistic that the price could even crash? I mean, in euro, I always think in euro terms, even down to 25, 20. I mean, is that like for very short term? Is that realistic? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a zero chance of happening. It's always possible. I would say the only way that Bitcoin breaks below 30,000 or even goes to 20,000 is if we see just a massive unwind in the legacy system. Like, so we all are familiar with what happened in March 2020. For that to happen again, there need to be some sort of cataclysmic blow up in credit markets and equities. So we'll see. And if the Fed breaks something when they try to taper, it could happen. over the short term, and derivatives and the kind of the debt in the crypto markets, right? So like I can go out and I can borrow $50 of dollars against $100 of Bitcoin. But if the Bitcoin price declines, well, I'm going to eventually have to cover. I might have to sell some Bitcoin. I might be a forced seller, and so that can have kind of these like cascading effects in the market at times. So it's not my base case at all that we see Bitcoin at 20,000, but if equities dump, then everything's on the table. And I think ultimately, like, honestly, it would be a really good scenario for it to happen, because if everything comes, not just Bitcoin markets, but if the NASDAQ continued to just absolutely tank in the housing market and like everything in this fiat credit system unwound, well, the response would be bigger than 2020. It would be unprecedented stimulus, more printing, yada, yada. And so like, that's kind of a welcome opportunity from my perspective. But I don't see it honestly getting that far. I think the Fed won't even, their expectation of 4 or 5 hikes in 2022 is advantageous. We'll see if they get there. But yeah, I mean, I think for now, 30,000, 32,000, that kind of level, really, really strong support. And we see like derivative markets have basically completely, they're no longer bullish whatsoever and actually have turned bearish. So, from that kind of perspective, things that look, pretty healthy. Anybody that's kind of wanted to sell over the past couple of months has sold. So it would really take something pretty extraordinary to break below that.
Got it. So if we want to like get an overview over the whole situation, like what kind of situation would make like change your mind, like, or change your, I don't know, perspective analysis? Like what would happen? Like if, I don't know, a war breaks out, hopefully not. I mean, I'm not sure whether it's just a theater, in Ukraine. And I don't know, there's a lot of people saying it could really break out, and, or geopolitically, or, more nation state or smaller nation state adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. I mean, do you think that's possible from your perspective? That sort of call it like what Parker Lewis calls it, a gradual and suddenly moments. Yeah. Is that something like that lingers in your mind, like something unexpected?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely honestly expect that in 2022. I think we're going to see smaller nation states. I think we're going to see increasing kind of a bifurcation of U.S. jurisdictions supporting Bitcoin crypto industry generally. And so that's kind of all my base case. I think it's kind of the game theory playing out. And so, those sort of things, like if, for instance, like if you saw some just like kind of hype announcement in like an altcoin, or like a small, like GameStop announces they're supporting Dogecoin and the price jumps immediately. But like with Bitcoin, like El Salvador adopts Bitcoin and they say it's legal tender, and there's a huge first step, and the price does nothing. And then the price sells off. And like, it's just, the reality is it's like at a $700 billion asset, like there's a ton of liquidity and order books and flows. Like Bitcoin's not just responding. I mean, I guess if a central bank said, hey, we're buying Bitcoin with printed money, like all bets are off. But like, or like, Apple says, hey, we bought $5 billion of Bitcoin and we're going to buy every quarter. That would be different. But I think generally we're just going to see kind of this steady flow of good news, the steady kind of buildup of better and better fundamentals, whether it's Lightning adoption, whether it's, regulatory clarity, whether it's increasing amount of publicly traded miners who have access to cheap capital, states supporting Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin in the treasury, legal tender laws, all this stuff is like positive news. But like, it's not like jumping up with the price. So like fundamentals improving, price obviously down 50% from the highs. Could we go lower? For sure. Like, I mean, it's definitely possible. But in terms of like risk reward, like Bitcoin is extremely attractive, probably more attractive than it's been all of 2021. And so, I mean, that's kind of how I think about it. I don't think like in terms of certainties over short-term, medium-term timeframes. I mean, I guess I would say I'm most certain that Bitcoin's the best money ever, and that nothing can kind of usurp it or change my view on that, unless like a few kind of crazy things happen that I really don't think have any chance of occurring. But like, so I guess long-term, I'm just like, yeah, Bitcoin is one. Bitcoin's going to win. So I don't really, if something happens in the short term, if Bitcoin goes up, down, sideways, flat, like I'm kind of unbothered, but I enjoy analyzing it and kind of seeing the different scenarios and how they could play out. I really do enjoy that, and I find it like intellectually stimulating. So, yeah, I mean, base case is that we're close to a local bottom. We might have already bottomed, and if you're thinking of allocating, I wouldn't hold off. I think it's definitely attractive at the moment.
When I listen to Greg Foss, or what's his other gold? I mean, he's not a gold. He's a gold, but he's a total Bitcoin. Like Lawrence Lepard, like
Yeah.
all these guys, who know or who have connection with Jeff Booth, who knows a lot of people in the background. So it seems, I have the impression there's a lot of talking and in the background. Something is behind the scenes. Something is going on. And the way I understood it, I think it was on some kind of I don't know, spaces, Twitter spaces, where Greg Foss or somebody else said the institutions, if they go into action, they want to do it sort of they do it together, or simultaneously. I mean, do you have the impression that there's like they are already just waiting for a signal? Like, I don't know, whether it be, as you said, regulatory or sort of a risk management, or is there something going on like behind the scenes where it's just a matter of time, and it just it could happen anytime? This is what I'm like curious about. Like, I don't know, hedge funds, or sovereign funds, or pension funds, or just big institutions coming in all of a sudden. Is that something in the realm of possibility, or?
Yeah, I would say, we just saw like Canadian pension fund buy a big stake in FTX. Stuff like that is just like a small little news tidbit, but kind of shows there's an appetite for this. Like, people are slowly coming to understand this thing's not going away. So they bought a slice of a private exchange, but Bitcoin, allocating to Bitcoin, the asset, a liquid asset, it's actually probably safer from that point of view. And so, we saw all the stuff in 2021 with NYDIG, right? Like, they're partnering with all of these regional banks around the world to offer Bitcoin stuff. That's being rolled out this year. That's being rolled out this year in the next probably 12, 18 months. So like, that is something that just 2 years ago would have been huge. It would have been unprecedented. And so like, you're gonna be able to log into your TD, or maybe not TD, but you're gonna be able to log into your whatever local regional bank, with your classic bank branch, and you're gonna be able to buy Bitcoin in your mobile app through NYDIG. So like, just something like that. Where
that's huge, huh? I mean, that would just open the gates for the masses, right? Is that what it's all about?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think and that's just one example. It's just the kind of normalization of this asset. It's not going away. If you've wanted to get Bitcoin exposure for the last 5 years, you could have gotten it. But for like someone that's 60 years old, like, they don't want to download Coinbase or Cash App. Like, they don't want to get a whole new app and do it on their phone. They want to call up Charles Schwab and be like, hey, give me some Bitcoin. Or they want to go like log into their trading account and buy some Bitcoin. And so like, we'll probably get a spot ETF in the coming year. I don't know when. I don't know Gary Gensler's motives. That's a catalyst. And another few catalysts are like increasing geopolitical adoption, the integration with the financial system. And I think we'll increasingly see, as kind of Bitcoin is treated as this just, risk on asset along with everything else. Like, it's less than $1 trillion. Equities, this equity index of tech and all that's tens of trillions. And there's unprofitable tech companies that are with crazy high market caps. And so like, if you're a pension fund, if you're an endowment, if you're going to gain exposure. And like, we saw that at 2021 just start. You saw a few kind of credit funds, debt funds. They just said, okay, we're going to get a little bit of Bitcoin. And so like, they're not done buying. That's for sure. I mean, these institutions think with not week to week, month to month, but year, decade, multiple decade long time horizons, because they have to. They have liabilities over the next 30 years. So that's just a start. We're going to see a bunch of energy companies and also like, all that stuff. That's going to be like, just another kind of narrative aspect to it. And so, what comes next, I'm not entirely sure. I just know that everybody's coming, and most people in the world are extremely underweight an absolutely scarce asset. So, supply and demand, one thing has to happen.
You've heard, about this, I don't know what to call it. Is it like seemingly positive announcements or gossip or whatever about like Russia, like Putin talking about like sort of a positive regulatory environment for crypto, sort of crypto and Bitcoin. Like, would you? What if some countries like Russia, China, I don't know, Iran, or all these countries, who are still dependent on the SWIFT system, all of a sudden start pegging it, or attaching it to Bitcoin, and they trade in Bit. Would that be like a huge catalyst? What do you call it? Like a accelerator?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think it's only natural for for countries that are like, dollarized or have access to the SWIFT system, like where traditionally the US has had a choke point and they just said, okay, you're cut off or you're sanctioned. Especially energy rich countries like Russia, right? Like, I mean, their Bitcoin mining is just a natural synergy to kind of plug in there. So it's like we can sell our energy at really extremely attractive prices currently. We have a settlement network that's global, that can't be censored. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? So like, it's going to happen. Does it happen in 2022? If Putin starts mining Bitcoin, or Russia starts stacking Bitcoin on the balance sheet, they have a bunch of gold. Do they announce it? I mean, the game theory says they don't announce it and they just do it quietly. So like, is it going to happen this year? I don't know. I doubt they announce it if they do, but like they're going to do it in this decade. Everybody's gonna do it. You're gonna see everybody kind of realizes that mining Bitcoin with excess energy is the best thing you could possibly do. And right now, like with just dynamics between hash rate and miner revenue, like I think the publicly traded miners, their average production cost of Bitcoin over the last quarter was 10K.
Wow.
So they produced Bitcoin for 10K and it's 37,000 or 50,000 or whatever it was at the time. So like, if you have anything but extremely expensive energy, like you can be profitably mining Bitcoin today. So like, it's a no-brainer. Intel is announcing they're coming out with a Bitcoin mining chip ASIC. That's huge. They're a $250 billion company. Like, all of these things are just like, another box that's checked. Bitcoin's climbing that wall of worry. And so, it's just like, we're still early. It doesn't feel like it. And we're in our, we're in our own echo chamber every day where we're just like talking with other people that get it. But like, the reality is like most of the world's like, it's a Ponzi scheme. Like, we're still so early to it. It's almost unbelievable.
Are you a fan of home mining? I mean, would you, I mean, not recommend, but would you say, hey, if you have like a relatively cheap or average price electricity, would you tell someone, hey, go ahead? I mean, what do you have to lose? Is that sort of your attitude, or what do you think about home mining?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially in colder climates. I haven't plugged it in, unfortunately, but where I live is pretty cold, and we required some like pretty cheap miners. They're not efficient whatsoever. But I know a lot of people that have built setups that they plug their miners in, they spit off a bunch of heat and noise. So you have to kind of figure that out. But if you can, compress the noise a little bit.
Oh, there are solutions already, right? I mean, there's so many people like working behind like immersion, like fluid, whatever, or like, super soundproof boxes like Steve Barber of Upstream or whatever. Yeah.
It's really impressive. Yeah. So, I mean, like in that scenario, it's a no-brainer. They kick off heat, you heat your house, and you're basically, mining Bitcoin. Like I know someone that they live in like the north. It's 0 degrees outside.
Awesome.
And they don't have a heating bill. But they have a Bitcoin mining bill. And so like,
that's a no-brainer, huh? Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
So, I mean, can I ask you, do you mine? Do you mine at home or?
I haven't yet, unfortunately. I've been lagging, but I mean, that's the plan eventually.
I mean, there's, I don't know whether you're up to date, with this whole tyrannical, totalitarian shit that's going on in Austria, Germany, Europe, everywhere. I mean, with this whole vaccine. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of people thinking seriously about migrating, about, moving out of the country because of this whole, mandatory vaccination, this whole tyranny bullshit, all these corona bullshit. So, would you say that, let's say, El Salvador with its volcano bonds, I mean, this is what I'm trying to ask, I guess, if that really takes off and, they can, and they are able, to just make themselves independent from this whole, criminal IMF and just, build infrastructure and, be totally advanced in technology, infrastructure, bring in entrepreneurs, investors. What is on your horizon? This is what I think I'm trying to get at. Is that something that can all of a sudden, change, like be a paradigm shift?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's one of the more exciting aspects of Bitcoin, to be honest, is like, I tend to focus on the financial side of things, data, numbers, all that. But deep down, Bitcoin is freedom, sovereignty. There's an increasing amount of people, especially after 2020, that make an income from their smartphone, make an income from their laptop. And so like anywhere that's a Wi-Fi signal, obviously there's, tax laws and, like citizenship and all this stuff that's like, kind of trying to keep you walled in. But in the US, especially, like, we've seen a huge migration from blue states that want to force you to use vaccine passports and wear a mask outside and do all this stuff, to red states where they're saying, hey, you're free, come here, live here, you don't have to pay tax, income tax, like all and so that's just the US. And obviously there's not everyone in the world has the luxury of having a country with 50 jurisdictions to choose from. But we're seeing, I know personally, like at an individual friendship level, people that have literally uprooted, abandoned their country, their friends and family because of tyrannical acts over the last 2 years, and moved somewhere else that's free. And whether that's, legal on paper or not, they're saying, no, I'm gonna take my wealth with Bitcoin. I'm gonna go move somewhere else. I can provide value and produce value anywhere in the world, and I'm not going to subject myself to this tyranny. And so, like, that sovereign individual thesis is right back there on my shelf.
Yeah, I see.
That's that's at play. And so the traditional, the bureaucrats, the politicians, some of them understand, but I think many of them are, don't see what's coming, and don't see that, for once, people actually have legitimate optionality, and they don't have to be subject to tyrannical laws and arbitrary rule, because they'll just say, all right, I'll move, and you won't get any of my capital when I move too.
And that's, I mean, we can't emphasize that enough. It's just so fucking unique. You just, whatever assets you have, or you have a property or any kind of property or real estate or anything, you just sell it. And it's unconfiscatable. It's not, you can't seize it, you can't confiscate it. You can just, put it in your brain and just go anywhere, right? I mean, this has never been possible. I mean, just imagine you'd have some, bars of gold or whatever it's called, I mean, try to resolve that, right? So, okay, I'm not sure whether these questions are really, they're in German from my girlfriend's brother, because I know you are in about half an hour on Bitcoin Magazine, right? So I don't want to take too much time of you. Can you, it says, can you sort of dedicate like a transaction with on-chain and Lightning with a purpose? Like, can you attach a purpose and a payment reference, or sort of a sender? Is that like a question do you understand what that means? Or
yeah, I mean, I would say that I don't look too much at individual transactions with kind of on-chain analysis, more looking at kind of aggregate stuff. And we can see, traditionally like 2 of 2 multi-sigs, like a Lightning channel. We can kind of see what type of address or multi-sig. We can kind of see that quorum on chain. So you can see like what's a public Lightning channel, or you can assume with pretty good, you can assume with pretty high likelihood. But with Taproot, and we haven't seen this really take off yet, but with Taproot, you can kind of that transparency of what's a multi-sig, what's a Lightning channel, what's just a regular address. You can't see it. It takes all of that and kind of, muddies the waters. So not sure if I answered that exact question, but Taproot from a privacy perspective is pretty optimal when you're talking about that on-chain analytics.
Mm-hmm. The other one is, can you just any like arbiter or random? Can you like put a random text on the Bitcoin blockchain? Like write a text on a Bitcoin blockchain instead of a transaction, and with what kind of tool or website can you like read it out? Is that something you can answer? I think it's too technical, but
Yeah, there's I mean, in a Bitcoin transaction is what's called an op return. So you can include text, but you have to actually send a transaction. So you can like send the transaction to yourself and broadcast it, or you can to send it to someone else and in the op return say something. And so like for example, in the Genesis block, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for big banks, Satoshi encoded a timestamp in the op return, and so something like that you can kind of include, but you can't just put blank text. You actually have to send the transaction to get it on on that
Exactly.
immutable
Yeah.
ledger.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Total. The last one would be, with what kind of tool can you verify the winner hash, like like the ultimate like winner, like the hash that wins. I guess the block, is that the question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say like miners are looking for a valid nonce, is what it's technically called, and so when they find that, and I'm not the most well spoken on this, but essentially all nodes verify that it's a valid hash or a valid nonce, and they found basically that they found that next block, and so then those blocks connect to the basically connect with the previous block. And again, I could be more well spoken on this, but the nodes are what ultimately
Yeah.
verify it. And so if you try to say, hey, I'm on a block, and you show me a hash or my node that's not actually valid, then I'm just going to reject it, and you're not going to be able to extend the chain.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. What is for you? I mean, what's the most exciting stuff that's happening in the Lightning sector, like or Lightning development? What is it that makes you really excited to?
Yeah, I mean, some things that haven't really manifested yet, but are in the pipe. From what I'm hearing, is that we're gonna see. So obviously, Lightning adoption is taking off. Stuff like Twitter and all that, which we don't even talk about anymore. It's pretty cool. And funny enough, like so, when Kayvon, if you wanted to send me some Sats, right now it's with a Strike integration, but I don't. You're sending me dollar values, and I receive dollars. And so there's actually like Tether and Bitfinex, and Tether as the stable coin is on the Ethereum blockchain and the Solana blockchain and the Tron blockchain and all these altcoin chains. They have those stable coin assets. Well, Tether is actually is working to establish really these big fat lightning channels, these huge massive lightning channels, just kind of with itself, and they're going to create synthetic stablecoin US dollars on the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So that's pretty exciting because just being able to have and essentially with Lightning, you can have and maybe not just Tether, but in general, you can have this sort of synthetic dollar, with how financial markets work, with how Bitcoin derivatives work. You can have if you're short Bitcoin on a derivatives market, if you have Bitcoin collateral and you are short 1x short Bitcoin, you're holding a synthetic dollar, because when the price ticks down, your collateral value is decreasing, but your short position is increasing by the same exact amount. So it's just like you're holding a synthetic dollar. If your price goes up, your short position is decreasing, but your collateral value is increasing. You're holding a synthetic dollar. So with Lightning, there's some pretty interesting things that haven't been built yet, but a lot of really smart people are working on. That's essentially, we're going to be able to have, we have native Satoshis, we have Bitcoin, but if you want that. But in the meantime, while there's still exchange rate volatility, while there is still, the daily volatility of Bitcoin, the week to week, month to month volatility, you can have almost a synthetic dollar, but you don't need to have it custodied with USDC or Tether or a commercial bank, a central bank digital currency. You can just use it native with Lightning. So it's not there yet. It's not built out, and I wish it was. But the thing that excites me is that a ton of really smart people are working to solve this stuff. And when we get it, we'll have not only censorship resistant Satoshis, but also we'll have censorship resistant, dollars, essentially synthetic dollars, which is pretty cool, and definitely has a pretty big use case.
Okay. When people there's a bunch of people and they talk about stablecoin, they're so super excited. What is it? Can you explain to me or in layman terms, what is it that makes the Bitcoin development a mass adoption, or just I don't know, the bullishness? Like, what is it that people are so bullish about stable coins for the Bitcoin space?
Yeah, so I think for the time being, Bitcoin is not legal tender in the U.S. Or really any country besides El Salvador. And so, as Bitcoin is a monetary asset, it's a bearer asset. It allows for you in the same way that you can, if you own a house and or if you own a bunch of Apple stock and you want to borrow some money and you don't want to pay taxes, you don't have to sell the stock. You can borrow against it. So with stable coins and the introduction of stable coins and the kind of the whole crypto ecosystem, Bitcoin in particular, it allows for you to over collateralize because a house is not volatile really. I mean, there's obviously circumstances where it is, but it's not trading every single day like a Bitcoin is. But I can say I can pledge $10,000 of Bitcoin and get $5,000 back of dollars, or I can get $2,000 back if I'm risk averse. And so what stable coins, the reason they're pretty advantageous is that most people, or a lot of people I know in the Bitcoin ecosystem, myself included, a lot of hardcore hodlers that are saying I'm never selling, are sitting on like 100% of their net worth in Bitcoin, or like a huge amount. Well, do you want to sell if you're 100% in Bitcoin? Well, no, I don't want to sell. Okay, well then what are you going to do? You're just going to work forever? I guess that's a solution. But if you want to invest, if you want to spend, if you want to, buy a nice house, you can collateralize some of that Bitcoin, just a little bit, get the dollars, and finance things. And so that's where stablecoins really come into play. It's kind of establishing its own native cost of capital. So like the Fed sets interest rates. Well, in the Bitcoin crypto ecosystem, there's a dollar lending rate and borrowing rate, and it's variable. I mean, it's not set by anyone or any one thing, but what stablecoins really allow you to do is allow this kind of collateralization, the financialization of Bitcoin to occur, as well as kind of like it allows for you to potentially like risk off, right? For a while in the whole crypto ecosystem, the exchanges, it was Bitcoin and a bunch of altcoins, but no kind of dollars. And so, the best case scenario was you held Bitcoin and it went down 50% while everything else went down 90%. And so we're focused on Bitcoin only, but just having, the Bitcoin price, many people think of it in BTC USD, and the dollar, for better or worse, is still that kind of standard global unit of account. And I think that's changing, but it's not changing yet. And so for the meantime, stable coins, whether it's USDC or Tether or Lightning, stable coins or central bank digital currencies, if they come, it still plays a role. And so I think it's kind of exciting just seeing that development and the financialization of this ecosystem in general.
Okay, super. So last question, about this, there's this whole discussion about how is the Fed, the central banks, I mean, even the European Central Bank, sort of an extended arm of the Federal Reserve. I mean, just the privately owned Federal Reserve. I mean, do you see? I mean, they can't they can't go up with the rates. So, or at least not really in a real sense. So, do you see there's what's the US debt now officially, like 30 trillion? There's some people talking about 50. It could easily go to 50, 100 trillion, because it's like trillions. It's like, I mean, it's sort of a terminology that's wasn't even acceptable in after the crash of 2008. So what do you see on the horizon, with the astronomical debt that's upcoming, or the inflation? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think we're just, we're at a point of no return in the debt spiral. So federal debt to GDP is over 100%, total debt to GDP is 400%. And so, if you just think of debt to GDP, the total debt to GDP at 400%, since 1971, I ran the numbers today. Since 1971, basically the GDP's increased 20x. So nominal GDP has gone from 1 trillion, 1 point something trillion to 23 trillion. It's gone up 20x, but debt has gone up by 50x. So we saw debt to GDP go from 100% to 400%. So the income that we need that is used to pay off the interest and principal on the debt has risen by 20x, but the debt itself has risen by 50x. So like the math doesn't compute, it doesn't work. So how is it resolved? Well, it's resolved by the currency just getting pillaged. The currency is the error term. And so, we're in a debt spiral, and as for, in a credit-based money system, the only way to, grow is more credit, which means more loans, more interest, and it's just a snowball. And we've passed the point of no return. Like mathematically speaking, it's not just like, I'm not just being like, oh yeah, it's too late, guys. Like, no, like legitimately, it's mathematically too late. There was a time, say like in maybe 07 or even like 09, if we could have maybe weaned off it, but those choices were made, and we're past that point. So it's either total collapse or perpetual inflation. And so Bitcoin is kind of just an opt-out. So where I see the debt, I mean, I'm no macro, I'm no macroeconomic expert, and I don't know what the Treasury is doing tomorrow, but I do know that debt is going to go up and to the right, and there's no way to really pay it down. It's going to continue to go up in somewhat of like a Ponzi-like fashion. And so, I don't really want to play that game. So I'm going to buy some Bitcoin and
exactly, yeah. And the system, is so interdependent. I mean, it's such a miracle that the system can, kick down the can down the road and procrastinate, and it's just amazing. I mean, we aren't even talking about like unfunded liabilities. This is, I mean, the whole system is broke. The pension funds they're broke, especially in Europe. They're just broke. This is something that's just boggles my mind. But anyway, I mean. I mean, I don't know what's the real like number in the States. It's like 160, 180 trillion with unfunded liabilities, but does it matter? It really doesn't matter. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're on an unsustainable path, and the numbers. The reality is, like, if any politician is approached and they're saying, all right, are we going to default? Are we going to be now like reverse course and be what's it called, prudent? Are we going to tighten this and pay down our debt? No, the incentive is spend more money. We're going to stimulus, we're going to make people feel good, we're going to grow our way out of this, when in reality it's not what's happening at all. But the political incentives are just spend. So that's what's happening. Just write a blank check, Fed will buy the bonds, and we'll rack up some more debt. I mean, it's nothing but a thing, especially when terms are 4 years, right? No one's thinking in any term, like long-term.
Just politics. Yeah. So Dylan, just okay. One final question about this whole center, because there's an agenda going. I mean, you can, it's all in our faces now. The whole their agenda, whatever it's called, central bank digital currencies, Great Reset. This, I mean, all this theater and I don't know what to call it, false flag theater. I mean, what if, are they pushing it for like central control? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some sort of agenda by a certain group of people going on. Some political puppets in place. I mean, I'm no expert, or I don't know if there's a man behind the curtain other than just kind of corrupt incentives are creating these undesirable outcomes for lots of people in lots of different places. Definitely some sort of power grab. And the last 2 years, there's definitely been clear winners and losers of a lot of the stuff that's happening. So I think ultimately it's just a lot of the stuff, the clampdown on freedoms, the tyrannical political leaders. It's just a result of misincentives and a corrupt money. Ultimately,
yeah, totally,
I mean,
totally corrupt. Yeah.
So
is it good for Bitcoin? That's my question. I mean, is this whole process like good for Bitcoin, for this? Because it just pushes the Bitcoiners more and more, into more decentralization, more, a different incentives game,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's good for Bitcoin. I mean, I guess everything is good for Bitcoin, but no, I mean, it's just, glad we have Bitcoin, glad that Bitcoin exists as a, alternative, as an escape hatch, because without it, it would be a lot more dark.
Okay, gotcha. Well, Dylan, I really enjoyed talking to you, and so much to learn. Is there any other final thoughts, or where can people find you? I mean, you are like, you do so much stuff. I mean, you are a Bitcoin Incorporated head of market research, UTXO management analyst, analyst at UTXO management. You do the Bitcoin, you focus on the Bitcoin market deep dive. So anybody can subscribe to your newsletter, co-founder of 21st Paradigm. Is there anything else you do?
No, that about covers it. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a while since we caught up, but yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter for the most part. I hang out there a good amount, and so just interact, and we can talk back and forth. See you on the web.
Yeah. So okay, Dylan, I'll hopefully talk to you soon, maybe in a half a year or so, and let's do a recap then. Okay.
Hey,
see you. Bye.
Nice catching up, man.
Ciao. All right, so that was Dylan LECLAIR, and yeah, if you are total new, don't forget, go on the links I put in the show notes. Get yourself hardware wallet. If you still have your Bitcoin on the exchange, that's the most important thing. No, not your keys, not your coins. Use the discount code Davani. That's my last name, Davani. And yeah, just follow Dylan LECLAIR on Twitter. Subscribe to his newsletter. Amazing stuff, amazing analysis. And follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Subscribe to my podcast platforms. And yes, I appreciate any kind of feedback, suggestions for recommendations, or suggestions for future interview guests or topics. Could be in any shape or form, related to Bitcoin, definitely. Could be the bigger picture, even geopolitics, macroeconomics, insider, whistleblowers. If you have anybody, you can refer to me. Really appreciate that. My name is Keyvan Davani. I'm the host of the Keyvan Davani Connection Show.